Monday, April 20th, 2015, Single Family Design Board. Anyone wishing to address the board on an item not on today's agenda may come forward. Seeing no one come forward, the chair will close public comment on items not on today's agenda and bring it back to the board for approval of minutes of the Single Family Design Board meeting of April 6, 2015. And if I do this right, I should have those in front of me somewhere.
The minutes of April 6th.
Yeah.
I will
So do
move
I have
to
a
approve the minutes.
You have a motion for approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a second. Let's go through each item. Item 1, 1409 La Cima Road. Any comments, corrections? I do have an item on the staff. On item 1, we had scheduled that very day a site visit, et cetera. I'm assuming that when this does come back to the board, we'll still have that same site visit scheduled, correct?
Yes, we will, unless the board decides otherwise.
Okay, thank you. Item 2, 960 West Mountain Drive. Changes, corrections. Item 3, 210 Meigs Road. Items, changes, or corrections. Item number 4, 409 Lincolnwood Place. Changes or corrections. Item 5, 1912 Mission Ridge. Changes or corrections. Item 6, 3626 San Remo Drive. Corrections. Any further discussion? Okay. I will be voting for approval with the exception of item number 6, which I recuse myself on. Anyone else? Hearing no further discussion, chair calls for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Let's go to the consent calendar for April 13th. Mr. Ng, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the consent calendar minutes for Monday, April 13th are as follows. Item A, 3761 Lincoln Road. This project was continued 1 week to consent. Item B, 550 Owen Road. This project was continued 1 week to consent. Item C, 2431 Calle Almonte. This project received project design approval and final approval with the NPO findings. Item D, 118 La Vista Grande. This project received project design approval and final approval with the NPO findings with the following conditions. And item E, 3443 Sea Ledge Lane. This project received project design approval and final approval with the NPO finding with the condition as noted. Items A through E were reviewed by board members Motisha and Woolery.
Thank you. Any corrections, changes?
I have a
comments?
question,
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Chair, and I don't know anything about Project A on Lincoln Road. Can you
Yes.
tell us what it was on consent for today, or it wasn't there today?
It was there today, and we can comment on it when we get to that agenda. Obviously, this agenda, the applicant was absent, so it wasn't heard.
So just reading the description of it, it makes me wonder if it should be seen by the board. So when it comes to consent, I guess you have that option.
Yeah, I'll cover that in here in just a second.
Okay, that's my only
So
comment.
that's for April 13th. Any other comments? Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Okay, now let's go to this morning's agenda item, Monday, April 9th for consent. Mr. King.
Okay, actually Monday, April 20th,
Excuse me.
and we have item A, 3761 Lincoln Road. This project was continued indefinitely to consent with the comment as noted. Item B, 550 Owen Road.
Yeah, let's go through it. No.
This project received final approval as submitted. And lastly, item C, 947 Carrillo Road. This project received project design approval with the NPO findings and was continued indefinitely to consent with the following comments.
Thank you. Okay.
And
Questions?
items A through C were reviewed by board members Sweeney and Woolery.
Okay. To your question on 3761 Lincoln Road, project is under construction. The contractor appeared today. He wanted to include a second tower element on a staircase element that was on one side of the house that apparently the neighbors were objecting to the look of it. So he was offering a tower. Unfortunately, right next to it, he has another tower for an elevator, and it looked really strange. So we asked him to reconsider, and I gave him a couple of suggestions and suggested he also re-engage the designer, which apparently they had dismissed at this point, or some other professional to help him come up with a alternative. He was a little argumentative, but we can wait till see when it comes back to the board or back to consent calendar. And if we still don't have a solution, and if I'm on that consent, I'll probably move it up to here.
Good, because I looked at the drawings. They didn't show our consent, and to me the drawings didn't match what they were asking to do.
Yeah, and it was. I think he got them today that kind of match what they were asking to do, but it really looked strange.
Yeah, and the elevations didn't match.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll see what they bring back. And as I say, I'm scheduled now to be on consent for the next 3 months. So with the exception of next week, I'm going to be gone. So somebody may be needing to substitute for me, but we'll see what happens when he returns. Any other questions?
Well, so is there any way if you are gone, we can let whoever's on consent, or are they all here today that they
Well, it'll
can
either
just
be
remember
Brian or
that
Joe.
at least two of us would like, from what we know, we'd like to see it.
Okay.
So when you're saying they requested a full board review?
Mr. Ng, you could advise the applicant of such. He may decide not to make the change because it's a change after final. He already has an approved project.
That's correct.
So he might just decide to leave it as it is.
He has that option.
My impression is it should go before the full board based on this reaction to the hearing.
Okay.
It's already been approved. Even the stairwell is.
Yeah, that's already been approved. So he has in hand an approved by this board, an approved set of drawings. If he chooses to do nothing, he just gets to continue and finish the project. If he chooses to do something, then obviously whatever he chooses to do to change it does in fact have to come back. And what I'm hearing from you all is that it ought to come back to the full board.
Yes.
Is that an agreement? Okay, Mr. Ng, would you, if the applicant does reappear, would you please inform him that he'll need to come to the full board?
Yes, I'll make that note for that project.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on these items? Okay, I have a motion for approval, please.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Okay, let's go to announcements. Mr. Ng.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Real quickly, of course, we have the appeal of 2405 State Street to be heard at City Council tomorrow afternoon. And it's my understanding that Board Member Miller will be there representing the board at that hearing. A second item, I also wanted to touch on consent calendar duties. Some of you may have received emails and communications from me. We did not set a formal consent calendar duty calendar for this year, due to the untimely passing of board member Zimmerman, and we had a vacancy earlier on in the year, we just kind of let the schedule ride out. But at this point, I'm just wanted to check in with the board if we wanted to re-examine how we handle reviewing consent calendar projects. And currently, we have it such that we have 4 board members, one architect representative and one landscape representative, paired up, and they switch out every. We have one pair for 3 months, and then the second pair for 3 months, and then it switches back to the first pair, and so forth. We can look at continuing that arrangement. Currently, it's Chair Sweeney and Board Member Pierce through the end of June. We can look at having rotations that involve all of the board members here who have professional qualifications doing 4-month stints. We can also have 3-month stints where we just rotate, where you have 3 pairs and you have 4 quarters but 3 pairs, and they'll just go group 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, and so on. So those are just some suggestions that I have in mind, and I look to the board for any comments or feedback on that.
Okay, thank you. Well, there's some options on the table. What's everybody's thought? How would you like to proceed from this point forward?
Well,
Specifically after June, because I think we're set for between now and June.
well, I think it would be helpful. I mean, it is nice to share the duties. It's kind of tough dedicating your whole entire day. So it's nice to get some help.
That third option sounded pretty good to me, where there's 3 sets instead of just 2, and that way it's a longer run, you don't have to do it necessarily.
Right.
Oops.
Well, I'm never available on Monday morning, so if that's when the meetings are, I can't do it.
Well, I think since we have 3 architects and 3 landscape, people, that's probably the couples that should be lined up.
Yeah, I appreciate your offering a member Bernstein, but we will need members that have professional design qualifications for the consent review.
So, yeah, we operate on the same premise as the other review boards in town for consent review. So those are all done by folks that carry professional credentials.
So we
So
just
you're saying
add in another couple.
right? So we do 2, 2, and 2,
Yep.
6 of us. Is that and do it for 3 months?
Yeah.
Does that
Sounds
sound
good,
agreeable?
yeah.
Is that okay?
Fine.
Great.
Okay, I think we have a consensus.
Okay, so we
So if
have.
you can just rotate.
So we have you and Board Member Pierce for the next 2.5 months at this point, and then we'll have Board Member Motisha and Woolery come in after that,
Okay.
And then it's me
and
and Lisa.
yeah.
And I'm always willing to step in on vacations if need be. So
So
we
am
should
I.
have it covered.
Okay.
Joe is the same way.
Great. Awesome.
So I think the only other thing that would be helpful, David, is if you give us heads up 2 meetings ahead,
Sure.
just because I'm sure even if you print a yearly calendar, we probably forget our rotation.
Sure. I'll
So I think
set
you
up a
just kind of
reminder.
alert us ahead of time, coming May, whatever, you're on. So that would be helpful. Okay. Anything else?
No, that is all.
Okay, our subcommittee has not met, so I have no report, but I do need to get that scheduled. Anything else? Any other reports from the board? Okay, then let's go to item number 1, 409 Lincolnwood Place. Welcome, Mr. Peugeot. Could you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Alex Pusha.
And if you could share with us your responses to our last comments, and I'm going to have Mr. Miller read those.
All right. Number 1, the project is consistent in appearance, is compatible to the neighborhood, has quality materials. I have to repeat myself, sorry. The project is consistent in appearance, is compatible to the neighborhood, it has quality materials and the architecture, and follows the good neighbor guidelines. color board and S-tile roof are acceptable. Study the window fenestrations to match the architecture. Number 4, provide final set of drawings of the landscape plan. Action carried by Bernstein, seconded by Morticia. The vote was unanimous.
Thank you. So, if you could.
So,
show
yes,
us what-
there were some questions. I think the board liked the design, and there were some questions about the window breakups. And, well, rather than fighting it, I just changed the size of some of the windows and made them all consistent and in the traditional Spanish colonial style. So this got a little bit bigger, a little bit less rectangular. I changed the design of that one. And a little bit in the back as well, even though it's not very visible. And that's it.
Gorgeous.
Okay. And the landscape plan is now it's included as a printed page, and it has the plans, quantities, and sizes.
Excellent. Any other comments? Okay, Chair will open it for, before we go to questions of the board, Chair will open for public comment. Do we have any letters, Mr. Ring?
No, we do not.
Okay. Seeing no one come forward, I'll close public comment, bring it back to the board for questions. Anybody have a question?
I have no questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay. No questions on this side? Okay, let's go. No questions, let's go to comments. Let's see, we're here for
Final, hopefully.
final approval.
Oh, the yellow paper.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Any comments?
I totally support that. I think it's beautiful. Great job. I think it's a big plus to the neighborhood.
Okay. Anyone else? I think you addressed what we needed to address, and the windows look fine. Unless I hear further comments, the chair would entertain a motion for final approval. Let me just quickly go through the drawings. Front. So we have details. We have a landscape plan. And we have everything else.
Yeah, it has some structurals, but I didn't bring it.
Okay, chair would entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion
This is for final approval.
to give the project final approval with the following MPO findings. The project has consistency and appearance of the neighborhood and compatibility in size, bulk, and scale. Quality of architecture and materials is good, and that's it.
Okay, so do I have a second?
I second it.
Do I have further discussion? No further discussion. The chair calls for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So carried.
Thank you.
This is a 10-day appeal period. Okay. We're running a little bit ahead, so let's take about a 10-minute recess, and we'll be back here at half past the hour, and we'll take item number 2 at that point.
Loves a boy, and I've got it pretty bad, but
Probably. Hi, welcome. If you could introduce yourselves, please, and just speak into these microphones. This is all on television and being
I'm
recorded.
Susan Ryan. I'm the owner.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm Jack Schaefer. I've known Sue for 35 years. I'm an architect,
Okay.
and I volunteered to help them with this.
Okay, welcome. Sorry for the delay, but we're kind of required to be within
No,
5 or 10 minutes of the scheduled time. So let me read into the record. This is a proposal to construct a 410-square-foot master building addition to an existing one-story, 1,266-square-foot single-family residence with an attached 433-square-foot two-car garage. The proposed total of 2,099 square feet on a 8,603 Square foot lot is 63% of the required floor to lot area ratio. This is here for comments only because it still requires an environmental assessment. So, if you could share with us what you're doing.
Yes, well, of course, architects will always have to start with the setback. What the Ryans wanted to do was expand their existing master suite, and that's what we're proposing here, the 409 square feet. There are some plants that the Ryans have installed here. How long have you lived here, Susie?
17 years.
Okay, 17 years ago, that will be removed. There's a ficus and a holly. Those will be removed. There aren't any street trees being removed. So anyway, we're adding another restroom, and of course a sleeping and sitting area, and then the existing small master suite becomes a dressing room. The house is approached from below. There's a stair that comes up above the garage, comes into the house. It's all on one level. The living area is. There's a garage below the deck. So this is the master suite. Peter is actually going to build it. He's a project manager at UCSB. He has experience building, and he's going to build it himself. This is the front of the house. This is the addition shown here with the blue roof to help distinguish the difference. We are copying the same forms. The gable ends have the same kind of vent. We're using the same materials to match everywhere. You've got shutters on the front face and on the side that's visible from the street. The total height from the lowest point would be 17 feet 4. As you can see, it's lower than the existing house. Of course, it's not as deep, so. Here we have the south elevation and the east elevation, which is, of course, the back side of the house. All the materials will be matching, and Sue and Peter were quite a bit laying out furniture to get the windows where they wanted. There is a nice view to the north here of the mountains, so we have a window over here on the side, and they wanted to have access to the rest of the property here.
Okay, that's it?
That's it.
Thank you. Okay, Chair will open for public comment before we come back to the board for questions. Do we have any letters, Mr. Ing?
No, we do not.
Okay, anyone in the audience? Seeing none, Chair will close public comment and bring it back to the board for questions. Who has questions would like to start? I have no questions. Ms. Pierce, questions? No? Okay, I'll go forward with just a couple of questions. There's a new little porch here. Is that going to some kind of little stepping stone walk, or what's the thought? What happens?
Yes, I think that eventually they actually have some stepping stones along here coming up to the back, and I'm sure Peter's just going to replace those so he'll have access to the rest of the property.
Okay. And the property line is
It's
here,
right
correct?
here. Correct. Uh-huh.
Okay. And so when I was out there looking at the house the other day, I was confused because there's a fence here.
Mm-hmm.
But is this the property line back there?
That is correct.
Interesting. So the neighbor's shed is in
Right, and they are
their
working,
property.
Exactly, and the neighbor does have an easement for that.
Okay.
And that shed has been there since the day this was built.
Okay.
But they are working with the neighbor to see if they can actually remove it.
Okay. And since obviously this is going to be a home, an owner do-it-yourself project, as you indicated, is there any idea that they're going to how are they going to redo the landscape like right in here? Do you have any
I don't
idea
know.
yet? Okay.
We have a couple of olive trees there. We don't
Okay.
want
You can come speak up here. It's all right. We don't bite.
think that it's going to be that much different than what's existing. The olive trees are pretty mature. It's all natives out
Okay.
there. You know.
And then, question to staff. This shows, on his drawing, shows a setback here. And so, like we've seen in a lot of places and projects that have come to this, we've seen these little pieces of the house that go into the setback. Do they have to get a modification for this? Or did they get one already?
They did. That was done at the time that the project went through initially.
When these houses were
When they
built?
approved
Okay,
it.
so
Yeah,
those
we
are
had
in
it.
play?
They're, yeah, well,
Okay.
yeah, they're in place, yeah.
That answers my question. And then,
I think they're only 18 feet, and that's what the
yeah, because
modifications were at the time.
this house is similar, they were all built at the same
Yeah,
time. There's
right.
another model of this down at the end of the
Yes,
block. Okay. And then I had on your actual project, what was it? So you're gonna, and I noticed on the house, you've not drawn, and I didn't check, you don't have gutters and downspouts.
Oh, it does.
So are you gonna have gutters and
Yes,
downspouts?
yes,
in it?
there's actually, there's an existing drainage system that we're going to connect to,
Okay.
laterals underground.
Okay.
Leading to the street.
And do
So
you
we'll
have,
be
do you know if
connecting-
you have to do any stormwater on this? It's big enough, small enough?
It says you can't do that.
Yeah, this plan here has been marked up and says you cannot put that water underground.
We can't connect it to the
You need to
existing.
comply with the
Oh,
SWIP,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
Okay,
the
so there'll
requirement.
be some stormwater
Yes,
stuff you have to
okay,
deal with.
okay.
And then, obviously, I'm assuming that there's a crawl space under this
Yes,
piece.
exactly.
So there's going to be, I assume, some venting,
Yes,
so those will show up. And then, I'm assuming this is plaster to match the rest of the
exactly,
house.
same color.
And you're going to have some break in here where the stud system meets the foundation, and then you've got that break
Right,
between
with the
plaster and
screen,
concrete.
yes.
So that'll be kind of interesting to see how you're going to do that. Let's see. I think those were my only. Yeah, I think those are my only questions. Any other questions?
I just wondered if you'd talk to the neighbors around.
Not talk to the neighbors.
Except for the back people. Do they know what you're doing? The ones with the shed?
No, we have not talked to them yet. We haven't. I thought it was too early
Okay.
to bring it up.
The issue with your application, because it's a single story, remind me, Mr. Ng, why this project's here again, but it's because it's a single story, it doesn't have to get noticed publicly in the front, correct?
And the FAR, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't need noticing. It doesn't exceed the amount of square footage for that would trigger the noticing. It's technically a first-story addition, but it is here because it is taller than 17 feet.
Okay, so that's what triggers it being here,
Oh,
okay?
You mean that the property is taller than
No, no,
17
the
feet?
building.
The new addition proposals, because I thought he said it was 17 feet.
It's 17 feet 3 or something like that, but the existing is even more. I mean, yeah, 17 feet 4, and the
Yeah,
existing is.
so that's
I think
what,
this dimension right
that's what triggers,
there. 26.
that's what triggers it being here. So,
Slope down.
well, when we get to comments, we can talk about neighborhood interface. So, any other questions? Okay, then let's go to comments. We're here for comments only because it still needs an environmental assessment, and obviously it's going to need some work on the stormwater requirements.
I have some comments, Mr.
Yes,
Chair, and
yeah.
I look forward to hearing what you two have to say as architects. But architecturally speaking, exterior-wise, I think it looks fine. It's perfect. But I find the location in the room kind of awkward, where you go in one room to another room, and you've got a bathroom on this end and a bathroom on this end. So it's actually. Go ahead.
I'll answer your question. I just wanted to see.
It's not the purview of how you lay out your floor plan, so I don't know, but, I'm just commenting, if I was to approach this, I probably would have enlarged this room and made this a master bedroom suite with a master bath suite off of it, rather than, because it just feels awkward to me to go into a dressing room, and then you have these two opposite bathrooms. It's just it's a real obvious room addition, is what I'm seeing. And it seems kind of awkward and just awkward. So I'm just wondering if you had thought what the reasoning was behind that. And you know.
Well, I think it was space, really. It was, we were really constrained by
The setback.
how, yeah, the
Go
setback.
ahead with the setback.
I mean, if we had our choice, we would have laid it out differently, but it was the setback that made us squish it into this kind of a odd area and joining.
I guess my question is, could you have gone back this way a little bit? In that
Well,
direction?
No.
and remember, the owner's going to build it. It's much easier for him to just build
That's what
something here.
it's like. It's
Yeah.
not really our purview to,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious.
I think that's why
Well, and
Peter
also,
initially laid it out over here.
the main house has a certain number of windows in certain positions,
Yeah.
and we didn't want to have to start moving all the windows.
Because
on
he
the
had
main
talked about
house.
trying to do it in an angle and stuff, and he just didn't want to build that. You know, this was just the easiest way for him to build it.
Okay, other comments?
Is this, I always come up with a comment of, it's another unit. I mean, are we allowed to make a comment that it looks like it's just another unit that's going to have another entrance off over here, and close that off, there's your master bedroom, there's another unit,
And we all get suspicious here because we see a lot of this.
Sure.
and it's being built by the owner.
Other units. So I think that Mr. Miller's comments are correct. We can have our suspicions, but we can't really get into the layout of the plan. But along those lines, it would have seemed to me that even if you kept this configuration just as is, it would have been better to put the mechanical, you've got some space underneath this house, put the mechanical down there, and put that, in fact, a pair of doors that allowed you to walk into your private backyard, and put another window here so you get the view to the mountains. That's why I was asking, where does this door really go?
Yeah.
So if you're really looking at to maximize the view from this master suite, which would be quite nice, would be to put a pair of French doors over here that allow you to walk into the privacy of your backyard, put another window there that still affords you the view of the mountains. That might be a much nicer arrangement, and it still doesn't change the shape.
I like that. And we- see if
This
we can
could
sell
go
Peter.
underneath the house?
Well, actually, we put a horizontal furnace under the house.
Yeah, you got a lot of,
Right.
since you're up so high, you've got some space underneath. You
right
could
here.
stick all that mechanical stuff underneath there. And still hold on to this little niche,
Right.
which might be quite nice, and then have, instead of doors to mechanical, you could have French doors with a little porch out into your back here.
Right.
That might be a much nicer
And I don't know why
arrangement.
Peter wanted it like that originally. Maybe, I don't know.
So that might be something to think about. Anybody other comments?
Yeah, I would suggest some foundation planning because it's so tall. Looks like a lot of stucco on that 17-foot
Right.
face.
So I think,
So I know she did mention olive trees, and I see them off to the side, but as far as around the house adjacent to the new construction, it would be nice to soften that up.
Oh, yeah.
So
Definitely.
I guess my question to you would be, would we want to see some small little concept landscape?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have the whole yard, but maybe just the area around the house.
Yeah.
But how they could do that to
That'd be
soften
nice.
it up.
Is this a backyard that can be used as patio and
It's a patio right now.
It's a
It is
patio right now,
patio right now,
but there's
it's
a
not.
there's a little bit of a slope here coming up. Let's look at that. Probably the
Yeah, see, there's the patio right now.
yeah.
So it has an existing
There's
patio.
nothing opening onto it.
No, not really. I mean, there's a.
That's the
you're-
back door.
Yeah, Peter built this deck out here, and so I think he's got a barbecue right here right
I
now.
have my clothesline there.
Okay.
Anyway, they could use that.
Yes.
They could use
I
that
like
be
that.
part of the house. Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. Other comments? Okay. Then the chair would look for a motion with comments so we could give the applicant some direction for when they return after they get their environmental assessment. And we may want to make sure to include in the motion whatever that comment is about the stormwater
Right.
requirement. Who would like to make a motion? Anyone?
I'll make a motion, or do you want to give it a try?
Go ahead.
Okay, so comments only. So I move to continue the project until they get their environmental assessment and want to come back.
To the full board
To
or
the-
consent?
To the full board with the following comments. The board would like to see a partial landscape plan to integrate the new addition into the site. And number two, we would like you to discuss at least your proposal when you fine tune it with your adjacent neighbors, make sure that they can understand the height and any impacts or anything, and hopefully they'll be fine with that, as well as the neighbor behind you in regards to letting them know what you're doing, and then also if there's an issue you need to get resolved with the shed with them. Then finally, the board has made a few suggestions for some alterations in your plan, and we would like to see if you want to try to integrate those when you come back to the board.
And those are?
Oh, and we need to see a storm water management plan
Okay. And the areas for further study would be which?
for further study of,
You're asking them, we've made some suggestions, but we probably need to put in the motion what those specific suggestions
oh,
were.
for the further study
For further study, yeah.
of, with the neighbors?
No, with the plan.
I
Oh,
could-
the
I could-
design.
You wanna-
Go ahead,
you wanna help
Brian.
her?
Yeah.
Yeah, the board would recommend that you look at putting the mechanical closet under the crawl space. We also recommend that you remove the door on the one end and make that a window on the, what is that, north elevation? And to remove the mechanical closet and make that a pair of French doors opening up to the rear patio.
Those are the specifics, okay? Is that okay to the maker of the motion?
Perfect.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, is there further discussion? No further discussion, Chair will call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstentions? Okay, so I hope that gives you some direction. We'll see you back here when you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Write it down while we're talking. Well, then you can try the next one.
All right. We're still ahead of time. 4:10, and Jaime has told us that we kind of have to be within 5 or 10 minutes of because of public comment, or public notice. So we'll call for another quick recess. Okay, if you could share with us what you're proposing.
I will. It's a beautiful lot in a cul-de-sac that was part of the subdivision. I don't know if you remember it a couple of years ago that Brian Cornell had orchestrated, and there were, I think, three or four lots, two of which, one had an old adobe on it, and the other had all vacant lots. And Jeff Shelton just built a place at the end of the cul-de-sac. Our site is on the southern side of the cul-de-sac. It's a beautiful little meadow, kind of on a rolling, sloping field, really. The photos kind of help you imagine that. There's a really beautiful big boulder right at the top of the hill, adjacent to a pretty magnificent oak tree. So our site, essentially, for building is right here, which was described by an earlier building envelope that was carved out by the Planning Commission way back when the lots were approved. And so we plan to build around this boulder and the oak tree. The building our project actually faces the mountains for the northerly view of Lacumba Peak, which is really beautiful, and kind of wraps around the oak and then ends up facing west towards Goleta. In the distant, there's kind of a distant ocean view, backside of the Riviera, backside of Los Pinos Road. Site plan, I'm north. You guys are south. Here's the boulder, which is about 10 feet by 10 feet. Existing oak tree, building envelope, predetermined building envelope. There's also a height restriction. It's in the city, which the normal zoning for this area is 30 feet, but the Planning Commission approved, conditioned the property with a height restriction, which is 722 feet. So when you look at the site and add up the numbers, 722 feet from where we propose finished grade is about 16 feet. So it's not a tall building. It's one story. Planning-wise, want to save the little boulder. We're pulling in right off the lower part of the cul-de-sac. Cul-de-sac's here, pretty much at grade. Permeable paving. Want to keep this very natural. We don't have a landscape plan yet, of course, but want to keep it very natural feeling, just like the field itself now. Very organic. Try not to mess with the boulders since it's so beautiful. There's a lot of other large rocks on the property that we want to preserve. We park here. The garage is buried in the hill. The back corner is maybe a 2-foot retaining wall, again, tucked around the oak. Enter down about 18 inches to the existing house, which has a small courtyard at the entry, like a grass steel screed. The house, we like to see it be very modern. Our clients are interested in modern architecture, and we've just explored various vernaculars, and they feel very comfortable with this very modern design. The house itself is 2 bedrooms, a big kitchen, great room, and a den, which is on the southeast corner. You come into the house, it faces south towards the neighbors, which are below, which we plan to screen on the lower part of our property. The majority of the views are to the north, back over the parking of the mountains, and then to the west over the pool. We're also proposing a small accessory structure, kind of like a pool house at the end of the pool. And in this zone, the city allows for a 500 square foot accessory structure with a half bath. So this will be 180 square feet with a half bath. It has little stairways, so there's a little roof deck up on top. We're hoping for a glimpse of the ocean from up there. And it's modern as well. Plan, very open plan. Living area entry is through basically a glass wall. Fireplace element as you enter, you walk around that, you're into the living room. Master bedrooms on axes with the fireplace. And then the pool, kitchen, and dining are all on axes as well. So we have 2 strong axes. Another bedroom here towards the north, a little private patio, and a den, and 3 baths. So very little hallway space, more like an open plan. On the west-facing elements, which is the great room and the bedroom, we have about a 12-foot trellis overhang to protect these rooms from the westerly sun. Elevation-wise, this is the north elevation, which is to us maybe one of the more important elevations because that's where the beautiful views of the mountains are. So we have a very kind of modern plan with 3 simple facades, but they push and pull. The tallest facade being oriented towards the edge of the oak tree. And this is our maximum height, which is 722 feet. And then 16 feet to our cut. The entry is pretty much all glass within a simple box shape, like a cowl that comes out, protects people when they enter. And we plan to use steel windows like Riviera Bronze. I'm sure you guys have seen those for the most part. The next element you see, which is really part of the courtyard, is protected by this screed, which is part of the landscape. It's like a steel planter with natural annual grasses that will trim and cut, kind of very formal, but it's at the same time kind of natural and kind of reflects the feeling of the site already. And then the third element is the bedroom that is actually proud of these 2 masses, which again has a steel window looking towards the view of the mountains. Color-wise and materials-wise, we plan to use integral color plaster, kind of on the gray side, kind of natural gray feeling, soft edges. And then the spine of the building will be also plaster, but not pure white, but kind of a gray white. So the whole house would be in terms of grays, light grays and dark grays. And the element here, the center element, which is actually the window in the kitchen that looks towards the mountains, this will be clad at this point in zinc. It's a smaller element, smaller mass. So we're planning on cladding that in zinc. The eastern elevation, is that the east? That's the south elevation, which faces our neighbor, I think, Cody's house down below. Very simple. Again, this is kind of the less private side of the house. She's down below us. We plan to screen the property line. We have 2-bedroom windows and a screened master bath. This is like a wood screen sunshade. The eastern elevation steps down the hill. We have a slight grade, and so basically the house builds up in massing towards the oak, with the tallest mass being towards the oak tree, which is a beautiful tall oak, and then steps down the hill all level. This portion of the building is maybe out of the ground about 4.5 feet. So we're slightly cutting to keep our heights low, and then building a backfilling retaining walls for slab on grade, concrete floors. It's a modern house, concrete floors, steel windows, simple shapes. The southern view here is a section through the pool, proposed pool, we'll see what happens with that. And then a steel frame that goes across both the great room and the master bedroom with, again, the steel windows facing west. And this is a big sunshade. And then we also have roll-down screens on the interior of the room as well to protect from that low winter sun. On the garage is very simple, square massing. We'll have aluminum and probably frosted glass garage doors, plaster, gray to match the house, kind of earth tone gray. And then the little pool structure, which we propose so far, is clad in steel, sheets of steel, Corten steel. Kind of goes with the environment. We like that color a lot as well. And has a sunshade that kind of wraps up around it. It's very similar to the sunshade we're proposing off the master and the great room. So that's about it. Gives you an idea of what we'd like to do.
Okay, anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, before we go to the board for questions and comments, the chair is going to open it for public comment. Do we have speakers? Okay, we have 3 letters and 2 speakers. Before I go to the speakers, I'm going to, we all received these letters just prior to the meeting. Everyone get a chance to review them? One was sent, yes, to our emails prior. Everybody get a chance to review those? I'll summarize them very quickly. I'm not going to read them all. There is a letter from David Unger. He is questioning the detached 180 square foot covered roof deck pool house detached accessory building. He's really struggling with the definition of covered roof deck. He apparently tried to Google it and couldn't find a definition. So he's concerned that the 1-story house is really a 2-story house. Then I have a letter that I think we received earlier from Shelley Galt. She's concerned about the approval of a pool and water, exterior water elements, including a spa during a drought. And then I have a letter from Jill Stein. Again, she's concerned it's not a 1-story house, it's a 2-story house. I guess that has to do with the pool, the pool deck accessory building. And she's also requesting that limits be put on the hours of construction. Okay, so those are the 3 letters. Mr. John Warnock, please. If you could come sit right up here, please, and speak into that microphone. That one's on. Brian?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm John Warnock. My wife Dorothy is here as well,
Right into the microphone, please.
and we live at 599 Mountain Drive. And we're very interested in this project because our house is at a higher elevation, and the value and the enjoyment of our house is the ocean view. This site will be directly in the ocean view, and and we like modern architecture, so I'm sure this will be very beautiful. I also want to comment, I think that the selection of color is very appropriate. It's similar to a lot of homes in that area, and it's a beautiful setting. And I think that will really pick up the wonderful view. So I think it's a great choice.
Could you describe, point out where you're approximately?
Where do you live?
Okay,
Where's
we're
your
on Mountain.
Look at the big site plan.
This
Let's
power.
see if there's a picture in here. There's a map.
That's the site, that's where the
That's the reservoir.
reservoir used to be.
Okay.
Sheffield
All right.
used to be.
And then this is Mountain Drive.
Yes,
You see, this is Sheffield coming in here.
that's Rockwood,
I mean Rockwood. Our house is right at the extension where my finger is.
right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and this is a significantly higher elevation, and we see the university and the airport and the like. When I'll just be very brief here because I do appreciate your reference to Brian Cornell's designs when Invest West got the Planning Commission and City Council's approval to develop this property. There was a height limitation, and in part that was a very cooperative process. They put story poles out, and he came and looked at the property, from our perspective, and it made an abstract issue very clear, and it worked just fine. The highest elevation of the building at that point was just below the horizon, just as a function of what ours was, and it was perfect. And we're here today basically just to see whether or not that limitation has found its way, and that was one of your first comments.
It
and
has found its
we
way.
We appreciate that. So we look forward to this development. It'll be a beautiful site, and it really is a gorgeous area. And I guess something maybe I'm just, because the winter sun is such, I'm just concerned if there is a pool, the orientation be such that it not be a reflecting, a really hot spot from our property. And that would just have to do with the geometry, which we could get to later on when we see where the site is. But that's my comment.
Thank you. Next speaker is Cody Campbell. Campbell.
Oh,
Mark, they live up here?
Yeah, they live. Cody lives right down here. And then that guy like over here somewhere.
Okay. Hi.
Hi, I'm Cody Campbell. I'm at 559 Mountain Drive, and I am right below, south of. So there's a private road that goes through here, and I'm just on the other side of the hill that goes down.
I think you can see her place if you go to this. I think this is you, Cody?
Right, yes,
Right?
that's me, and that's an old configuration there. It was remodeled back in 2008, 2009. So my main concern is I would love to see story poles, because I can't quite tell just by looking where that pool house will be. And it would just be nice to see what is happening, what area it's going to cover. I realize it's within the envelope, which of course is fine. And by the way, the plans are gorgeous. The house looks absolutely beautiful. So if I could see story poles, just to see, I don't have a lot of view of the mountains. I do have some from a spot, like my back bathroom and my
Is your
studio
bathroom here?
space. The bathroom is, there's an
about there?
upstairs bathroom about here, and then there's an art studio that's over here, and that also I have somewhat of a view of the mountains. So if I could just tell where that pool house is, I would be be interested in that. My other question is, where is the machinery for the pool going to be housed? And
We have the pool equipment shown on the back side of the pool house, which is the
So that
western
would-
edge of it.
okay, so that wouldn't necessarily affect me?
Not necessarily, but we could screen it. I think there's a requirement by the city anyway that it's screened and blocked off so it doesn't create noise for people. So
Okay.
it's not like we have it.
There's decibel requirement
Yeah,
and a screening
exactly.
requirement.
Okay.
Exactly.
And I noticed from one of those letters, someone was concerned about the construction hours, and I too am very concerned about the construction hours.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, any other comments, letters? Okay, if not, Chair will close public comment and bring it back to the board for questions. Who would like to start? This is here for comments only because it still requires an environmental assessment.
I'll start out. Is it, the pictures show it's very open, very open,
The site.
the site.
And there's
From
actually a lot
every-
of oaks kind of surrounding this little grassy meadow.
So from especially from the southern side of of the envelope, it is,
It's
you're looking
open for a
straight up?
ways, and then there's two big oaks between us and Cody, in which we've always talked about kind of screening it on the property line too, depending on her
Yeah,
views.
that's the next comment I had.
Yeah.
You might end up screening down. You commented that you're going to screen down below
We thought about that. We talked about it down here.
down here.
Because they can kind of, there's two oaks here, which are pretty big, and there's another one here. And so that helps screen both properties, and there's some more trees. I'm not sure what they are here. So you kind of get a glimpse of Cody's house if you're standing here on the site now, but it's not like it all in your face. You know, it's sort of like, if you look kind of like that, you can see the corner of her place. So we can work it out with her, you know, how we screen things and, you know, try to preserve her views back if she has some. We don't plan to do a lot of landscaping. The site is so gorgeous as it is. We'd like to restore. We had another project up on Mission Ridge where we actually restored an old driveway to a field, and we grew grasses, natural grasses up in, I think it was Buellton, and planted them. So we're thinking of the same.
So your views are to the
We have
west.
some views to the west that are
And
very
the
distant,
mountains, and the
but the
mountains.
mountain view is really the big. That's where we have a lot of the glass, and that's the nice view. It's not the most amazing view of La Cumbre Peak, but it is really nice.
Okay. Other questions?
Yes, what is the material on the accessory structure overhead?
That's steel.
Steel?
It's like a steel frame that comes up at 7 feet, and then we have like we're thinking of like Ipe or something wrapping up over it, something that's fireproof, relatively fireproof. But it's like a screen. It's like a sunshade, so it's open.
It looks pretty open.
Yeah,
and
it's all open.
So with that, it's about 22 feet tall. So the combined height, you know, of the building plus that is about 22 feet.
Yes, it's up, and it's like a foot below, I think, the height limit.
Okay.
It drops down the pool. You go down 18 inches from the parking to the finished floor, and then moving west, you drop another 18 to the pool. So we're kind of going with the site that way. And then the pool structure is kind of tucked in the trees down here on the northwest corner. So it's at the lowest point. So it's really just that sunshade that goes up beyond the.
And the on that other little number 4 drawing of the accessory structure, what is that siding that's got the horizontal banding on it?
Be the same.
It's steel. Oh, I'm sorry.
I think it's the wood siding.
Oh,
the
wood
Ipe.
siding. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
And then the structure itself is Corten steel.
Mhm.
So it's got that rusty kind of
Mhm.
natural feeling to it, even though it's modern. There's a few really cool boulders that are adjacent to it.
Yeah, it turns all kind of brown tones and yeah, it's kind of good stuff.
How tall is it to the top of the shade structure?
That's
on
what I
the-
just said.
It's 1 foot below the height limit, I believe.
1 foot below the height limit.
So that was the height limit that the planning commission came up with first, based on that fellow's comments. I guess it's right at the height limit. Sorry, I thought it was under, but I think it's right at the height limit.
And go ahead.
Let's go to, Denise?
Yes,
More
I'm
questions? Done? Okay, Jamie?
The contour lines going towards the neighbor on the south, are those 5-foot contours?
Those are,
I was thinking they look like they are.
these are all ones.
These are ones.
Those are probably 5s. We kind of lose the rest of the definition.
So you're like about, she's down like 30 feet.
Quite a bit.
Yeah,
She's quite a bit below us.
yeah.
Okay, so these are 5 foot.
Mr. Chair, I
Yeah,
have
these are all 1-foots, and then it jumps, I think, to 5s.
Okay. Further questions, Jamie?
No, I was just trying to figure out when you put the oaks in there and how that's going to block the top of her house.
Okay.
Oh, I was just wondering about the zinc. What form is that?
If you go to the back on the colored elevations, it is, I think it's one back this way. There's a courtyard, and there's a small element. So this element actually is kind of deceptive in elevation. This actually goes proud. This is back, and this is back even further. This small little cube is in the courtyard, and this is clad with zinc. So it's the front of this, and the sides, about 2 feet on the sides, and it wraps back over the roof.
So are those like tiles or what?
There's zinc tiles. It's metal, and depending on how you do it, they either overlap or they're flush joints. And it's that natural kind of gray patina to it, kind of like Rhine zinc. Not shiny.
Okay, other questions? Okay, I'm going to go to mine. I just want to make sure I understand. So this little bump out here and this one here are clad in the zinc, or are these stainless steel?
These are actually steel. These two little fins.
So it's a little box, and the window frame is going to sit right to the edge.
Right.
Okay, and the zinc clad material is here.
Right.
And here.
Right. Actually goes like this, to the steel, and then this element wraps up and goes over the parapet.
Right. So we don't have a roof plan?
No roof plan.
Okay. What's your intent on the roof material?
We're thinking it's the PVC possibly, and we're not sure what color. We're thinking white just because it's more environmental and reflects the heat.
Okay. And then the trellis element that's over the, if I heard you correctly, over the little pool structure is an open.
It's open.
It's open. So it's not a covered roof.
No, it's got two little posts, and it's a super light.
So we don't have a roof plan, so to speak, of it yet.
Right, no roof plan. What it is, it's a deck. This has a 9-foot ceiling and 1 foot of structure,
right.
And then you go up the stairs and you're on this little deck, and that trellis element goes up and kind of L shapes.
It just kind of
grabs it.
Holds onto it. Okay, and then. I think you covered the planning conditions. Landscape plan's not here yet. I think you talked about the lighter color on this rendering as stucco.
Yes.
Let's see, steel windows. Okay, I think those are most of my questions.
We're hoping for steel windows. We know how crazy expensive they are, so we're going to start there.
Okay.
See what we can do.
Thank you. Okay, those are my questions. Any other questions? Yes,
I don't really understand the PVC roof. Why?
What's that?
I don't understand that material. I don't know.
PVC roof.
It's a vinyl roofing material. That typically what's happening, in fact, I just did my house this last summer, and I went down to get a traditional tarred layered roof, and the roofing company said, we really don't do those anymore. You really want to buy a PVC roof because they're guaranteed and so forth, and they do all the same things a traditional roof. So it's almost a rubber mat on the roof.
I know when
Any of the gutters inside? Or
Well, usually it's on a flat roof, and then you have either interior gutter systems with overflow scuppers or some other drainage system, depending on whether you have a parapet or whether you have just a flat roof with an edge.
And then I guess I was wondering about the color, because, I mean, people above them, that's going to be pretty
Yes, that'll
bright.
be on my comments.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, I'm glad you asked that question, because when you say PVC, I immediately thought of pipes, and you cut it in half, and so you had these little...
I'm glad you
Yeah, it's a system we'll see a whole lot more of as time progresses.
It's more fireproof too, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's the other reason.
and it meets
people
all
are
the,
using
because
it.
they're in a high fire zone.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions? Let's bring it back for comments. This is here for comments only because it requires an environmental assessment. So whatever shape your motion may take, it's just comments. Denise?
I'll go first. I think this is just gorgeous. I think you've showed a lot of sensitivity to the site and the placement of the buildings, the various, the garage, the accessory structure. I think it's. I would look forward to seeing the finished product. Actually, it looks really nice.
Thanks.
Other comments?
Well, my comment is, yeah, your sensitivity to the site is very, very well done and very well executed. However, the style of architecture is not my cup of tea, but that's just my opinion.
Okay, other comments?
I like it. I like, this is the south.
That's the south
elevation.
facade.
Yeah, I like the massing and the changing. It looks like a piece of artwork on a very open lot.
Yeah, it's
And if the neighbors, as obviously the neighbors like the design, and yeah, I would like to see it develop a little bit more.
yeah, thank you.
Other comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd
Yes.
like to talk to my fellow board members for a moment about the drought situation and whether it is in our purview or not to talk about swimming pools.
I think, as I've stated in the last two meetings on this issue, until we get direction from council or staff, this board has no purview to deny anyone the right in their application to present a pool design. We are still obligated to look at the context of the pool, any pool design, whether it's appropriate to the site, whether it's appropriate to the project being presented. But at this point, we have no direction from council. We have no direction from staff. We do not have any purview to deny or make comments about the use of a swimming pool. Okay, and we suspect that we may get direction from council here pretty soon, but as Jaime Limon advised me when this question came up the last two meetings, it will not be retroactive. He is assuming that it's not going to be retroactive in the direction from council, so therefore this project is in process, and so it will be highly unlikely that they will be denied a pool. Now, of course, that's not to say that when council does go to the next level of drought direction, that they may be prohibited from filling it with water. They might be able to build it, but they may not be able to put water in it. But we don't know that yet, so we really don't have that authority. Yeah, it's a skate park. So that's the extent of that part of the discussion. Yes.
Well, I think that it's a very nice project, and it'll be nice to see the colors, the color boards that you. And I think that that's really important to the landscape because that the house works with your natural landscape, which I think that the design of the house it seems conducive to what he's proposing, which I think is beautiful. The roof, and I know you're going to elaborate on that, Mr. Chair, but yeah, I mean, it seems like maybe it could be toned down somehow.
Okay. Other comments?
The color.
What does the board think about story poles?
It's not necessary unless he's below.
I have that under my comments. Maybe we can come back to that. Any other comments? Okay, I'm going to go to my comments. Let me start with the roof first. I certainly understand, yes, the need to put a PVC roofing material on here. But part of our purview here, and I need to share this with the audience. We've been instructed by council on several occasions now that we're not obligated to guarantee anybody's private view from any window in anybody's house or any point in their house. We're obligated to look at the public view corridor of adjacent neighborhoods as a whole, and particularly from the public right-of-way. Now, we encourage the applicants to work with their adjacent neighbors on privacy issues, et cetera, but the board, we've been, as I said, given direction by council, we're not required to preserve anyone's single view from a individual home. So just keep that in mind as we're discussing some of these issues, and particularly as we get to discussion of story poles. The other thing to note is under the normal rules under the City of Santa Barbara zoning requirements, a single-story house is defined as a house lower than 17 feet. So under ordinary circumstances, we wouldn't even be looking at this home if it were in any other jurisdiction within the city, because single-family homes that are under 17 feet do not have to be reviewed by this board. The difference is this is in a hillside design district, and that does then, in fact, come under our purview. So that's why it's here. Ordinarily, we wouldn't look at this home. Second is the fact that it does have planning condition approvals, and Mr. Ng, I would hope that when this travels back, if you could bring us in a copy of all the conditions that were placed on this. It may shed some light on the construction comment, because sometimes the Planning Commission does put restrictions on construction sequence, time, so forth. That may already be in play. Certainly, we could request, we don't have the authority in this board to demand time frames for construction, but we certainly can request that, and that might be something that we could consider, perhaps not today's action, but when we do get to either design approval or final approval for this project. On the roof color, I think one has to be really sensitive to the white issue, and I understand the white is the most energy efficient. That's what the green build code requirement is under the state of California, Title 24. But one of the concerns we have is this site will be reviewed from other places higher up, all the way around that area of Sheffield Reservoir. There's a home that was approved probably by this board some time ago and built on Stanwood Drive. That's a contemporary house, very nicely done. But as you drive down Stanwood Drive from the fire station, I think it's from the fire station.
Oh, I know which one it is.
Yeah. And the first thing you see is this flat white roof.
Big roof, yeah.
It's a big roof. And you can't appreciate it until you appreciate the home to get down there. So you might want to think really carefully about that. I've run into this problem on my projects where we really wanted to have a white roof, but for a whole bunch of reasons that was worked against us. So there are some other lighter colors that will still do as efficient, maybe not as big efficiency as totally white, but there's some gray and mauve beige colors that you might consider when you look at the roof material.
A question, I don't want to break up your design of the house, but is it possible to add maybe some traditional, not traditional, but some other type of roofing that would break that flatness up? I don't know.
Well, that's something for the designer to look at, but at least the color. That I do appreciate the fact that the color that shows whites on these renderings is going to be a little more in the gray. Let's see. I'm not as concerned about this little roof pool accessory building, perhaps as others are. It's going to be in the trees. I went out to the site. One of my dilemmas in visiting the site, and I see this site every Saturday morning because I happen to paint with a fellow that lives just above here. You probably know who he is. And so I can see his house as I stand on the street. So I see this area every week or every Saturday morning. So I was a little bit torn between having a very contemporary structure versus a Spanish structure. And as you know, the home is just
This is the hacienda.
the hacienda. Just there's that guy there.
Historic adobe.
Historic adobe. So I was really torn when I saw this, knowing that your firm was bringing it. I was suspecting it was going to be a contemporary home. Given all the other nature of the homes in the general area. On the other hand, the house is relatively small compared to the site. We're only at 66% FAR, and you haven't covered the whole footprint you could have covered under the Planning Commission rules. And the fact that you're keeping it to one story and you're tucking it in around the oak trees and down into the hill, I think alleviates my concern that it isn't a Spanish hacienda. So that kind of goes to maybe Brian's concern. So I'm less concerned, particularly because of the color palette you're proposing, than if it was a what's our guy that did the Getty Center white Meyer white building. That may be a little more concern. Let's see. I think short of that, those are my comments. Certainly as we move forward, I'm not sure story poles are necessary. And to the neighbors, story poles cost money. So the board is very conscientious about when we make people put story poles up, because they do cost from $2,000 on up, depending on what you require, because they have to be surveyed. So sometimes we're pretty cautious, but I'll leave that up to you guys.
My feeling is it's a one-story house. I think they've been extremely sensitive to the site, and I don't think story poles in this particular case are. I don't feel compelled to get story poles.
Okay.
Because it's one story.
I agree with Brian, and also because of the fact that that accessory structure is so far away, really, from any neighbors. It's a long distance, away. If it was, when we usually do story poles, we want those in areas like the Mesa where it's terracing down. Every property terraces down, and someone's going to build a two-story here. Then we definitely ask for story poles, because that's going to be right in someone's face. And but this is not the case here. So.
Okay, other comments?
I have a comment.
Let me just finish out here. Any other comments? Okay, I'm going to go to the applicant, your comment, and then we'll come back to the board for a motion.
I just wanted to point out, height-wise, we are at the prescribed height limit, but only this portion of the building is tall. So is that height? Is that height? The rest of the structure steps down, so it's only actually the 17 feet or the 16 feet actually is only right here.
Right. So the rest.
So it's 2 feet kind of drops with the site. So that was our plan.
If I can. And then just before we may go into motion, just so the audience understands, this is here for comments only. It has to have an environmental assessment by staff. They've still got to finish looking at this to determine whether there's any environmental impact on this particular site, and then they'll report back to us. I suspect when it does come back, it will probably come back requesting what we call design approval. That essentially means that if we do give it design approval, that we're in general concurrence with the proposed design. Typically, we generally have comments for additional study or additional points to be made at that juncture. If we do give it design approval, that has a 10-day appeal period. That appeal is directly to City Council. If that proceeds without an appeal, then it goes into what we call final approval, and that's where the applicant and the architect will do a complete set of drawings and bring it back with all the details, all of the colors, all of the requirements for a complete set of plans. We'll look at it, and if we deem it complete and still within the framework of our original design approval, then we will give it final approval, and that again has another 10-day appeal period, and that is appealable directly to the City Council. So with that background, the chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, could I interrupt
Yes.
you before we make the motion? I just want clarification based on the letters that we did receive.
Yes.
So the roof deck is, do we have screening for the roof deck and, what is the actual size of that deck?
180 square feet.
180 square feet.
It's this little building right here.
So that is big enough for a couple of couches and some chairs and a barbecue.
2 chairs and a table.
But it's 52 feet
like a,
from the...
it's like a bedroom.
Consider it's less than, it's almost half, if a two-car garage under city requirements is 400 square feet, it's less than half of a two-car garage.
Okay, and then
That's
the other
It's a single-car garage.
okay, so the other comment just had to do with the building hours, which you've already talked about. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Chair would entertain a motion.
I'll try my luck.
Okay, go for it.
I move that we continue the project indefinitely
Full board
Probably.
consent.
with
Come back to the full board of consent.
full board consent, and with the comments that we've made about the design. I think we all agree that we won't need story poles. Do we?
Well, no, it's comments.
Oh, comments, okay.
And
Any issues to study further? Any things we want to see, like a roof plan or a landscape plan?
yeah, we need landscape plan. We've commented we need obviously need a landscape plan and a roof plan, and just to consider some of the comments we made about the roof.
Roof color, correct?
Roof color, yes.
Anything else? Okay, that's your motion on the floor. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further comments? Any further comments from the members of the board? Yes.
I always like when I go to the design reviews and we get positive comments about the architecture. I always like to have a little bit about, say a little bit about that. So when we come back next time, people remember that they like, in general, like the direction.
Okay, would the maker of the motion consider
Yes, I will
comments?
consider that the board is in favor of the direction that you're going with the design.
Thank you.
And everybody in the audience has so commented. Likewise.
Okay, that's in the motion. Did you catch that? Is that acceptable to the seconder? Who seconded?
I did.
Oh, is that
I was
acceptable?
looking at the audience. I think that's true.
It's acceptable? Okay. That's the motion on the floor. Any further comments? Hearing none, Chair calls for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? We have one opposition. Abstentions? No abstentions? All? That's the vote. Thank you.
Great,
Okay,
thank you guys.
so we'll see you
Appreciate it.
again.
Appreciate your
Okay,
time.
Thank you. Did you abstain or vote
No,
no?
I voted no. I voted no because you added on something that we supported the style of the architecture, and I didn't support that, so.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. Oh, and no further business. The chair shall adjourn the Monday, April 20th, Single Family Design Board.